It is Monday, February 2nd, 2026. And today we are doing something a little dangerous. We are taking a genre that, let's be honest, most people dismiss as trash. You know, the guilty pleasure, the background noise while you fold laundry.
Yeah, the stuff you don't admit to watching at a dinner party.
Exactly. And we're going to argue that it is actually the most significant cultural shift of the last 50 years.
It's a bold claim. I can already hear people rolling their eyes thinking, oh, great, an hour on people throwing wine at each other.
Right. But that's the thing.
But when you actually look at the stack of research we have today, it's a hard argument to refute. We aren't just talking about entertainment anymore.
Yeah.
We're talking about a fundamental change in how human beings perceive reality itself, how we perceive truth.
Exactly. We are diving deep into reality television. And look, if you're listening to this thinking, I don't watch The Bachelor, I don't watch The Housewives, this doesn't apply to me, you are wrong.
You're absolutely wrong.
Because the mechanics invented by reality TV, the confessionals, the editing of truth, the commodification of the self, they've escaped the television screen.
Oh, they've completely broken containment.
They run our social media now. They're starting to run our politics.
You know, it's funny you put it that way. We've essentially built a society that operates on the rules of Survivor. It's true.
Yes.
The genre has moved from being a fad, which is what everyone called it in 2001, to being, well, the operating system of modern culture.
So our mission today is to figure out how on earth that happened. We are going to dig up the absolute roots of this, which go back way, way further than the 1990s.
Much further.
We're talking Nazi Germany. We're talking the 1988 Writers Guild strike. We are going to break down what the industry calls soft scripting.
And I think we need to answer that really big central question.
Right.
Did reality TV just hold up a mirror and reflect who we were already?
Or did it actually train us?
Or did it train us to be who we are now? That's the real question.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. Before we get into the wild history, we need a working definition. Because reality TV is this massive umbrella.
It's huge.
It covers everything from a singing competition to, a documentary about crab fishing in the Bering Sea.
Right, and they're totally different experiences. So if you look at the academic definitions, the thing they all have in common is it boils down to a genre of programming that documents purportedly unscripted real-life situations.
Purportedly.
Purportedly is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence.
It's doing all the work.
Starring ordinary people, or at least they start as ordinary people rather than professional actors.
Okay, so unscripted and ordinary people. But that could also describe a Ken Burns documentary. What's the difference?
Well, there are structural markers,
right,
things that separate it. The biggest one is the confessional.
Right, the interview.
The interview segments, where the action freezes and the cast member sits down, looks just off camera, and narrates their inner monologue to us.
I couldn't believe she said that. It gives you the internal thoughts that a documentary would usually just let you infer.
Exactly. It removes all subtext.
Yeah.
Then you often have an elimination format, which is key.
Yeah.
And probably the biggest thing is a deliberate blurring of the line between observing reality and creating entertainment. A documentarian's goal is to observe. A reality producer's goal is to make a good TV show.
And if reality's boring, you goose it a little bit.
You goose it. You produce it. That's the key.
Okay. So with that in mind, let's jump into the history. Because the timeline in these notes, it just blew my mind. I think most of us, myself included, assume this all started with The Real World or maybe Candid Camera.
That's the common wisdom.
But you found something much, much darker and older.
It is controversial, and some media historians debate it, but if we are looking for the absolute first instance of observing ordinary people in a domestic setting for broadcast, we have to look at Germany.
When?
In the 1940s.
Wow. During the Nazi regime.
Yes. There was a show called Familienchronik, and it translates to A Night with Hans and Jelly, and it featured a young couple. Now, here's the thing. They weren't actors playing a role. They were presented as themselves, acting as model Aryans.
So it was aspirational. This is how you should live.
It was pure propaganda. They were presenting their everyday lives to the camera, supposedly without a script, to show the ideal German home life.
That is absolutely chilling. It's reality TV as a tool of the state.
From its very inception. It was heavily censored, obviously, curated to present a very specific image. But structurally, if you look at the core components, it fits the definition.
It's the weaponization of the ordinary.
Precisely. It established from day one that this genre was not about capturing truth, it was about manufacturing a specific version of it.
So from the very beginning, the genre was about manipulation. That sets a dark precedent. Okay, so let's fast forward a bit. Let's move into the post-war era. This is where we get the stuff that looks a lot more familiar to American audiences.
Right, 1948. This is the name everyone knows. Alan Funt.
Candid Camera.
Candid Camera. This is the prototype for a huge branch of the reality tree. He actually started it on radio as the candid microphone, which is a fascinating idea in itself.
A prank show on the radio.
Yeah, but moving it to television, where you could see the faces, that changed the game. It was pranks, sure,
Right.
you know, the talking mailbox, the car with no engine. But the core appeal wasn't actually the prank itself.
It was the reaction.
It was the reaction. It was watching a normal person's face go from confusion to anger to laughter when they realized what was happening.
It was the first time a mass audience was asked to find entertainment in the raw, unpolished, unscripted reactions of regular people.
And that hunger for realness just kept growing. I mean, throughout the 50s, you had all these weird early experiments.
Yeah.
Shows like Queen for a Day, which was just brutal.
Oh, that show is something else. Women competing over who had the most tragic life to win a washing machine.
Exactly. Or Confession, a show from 1958 where they just interviewed criminals. Like a precursor to all the true crime stuff we see now.
So the seeds are there. But the next major evolution, the shift from it being a gimmick to something more like a documentary, that happens across the pond.
It happens in the UK in 1964.
This is the Up series. 7 Up.
A masterpiece. I mean, truly one of the greatest achievements in television history, reality or otherwise.
Explain the concept for anyone who hasn't seen it.
So Granada Television, a British network, they interviewed 14 7-year-olds from wildly different social backgrounds in the UK. You had kids from the absolute upper crust, boarding schools, and kids from the East End of London from poverty.
And the premise was based on that Jesuit motto, right?
Exactly. Give me a child until he is 7, and I will give you the man. The idea was to see if England's rigid class structure in the 60s predetermined their lives.
A fascinating sociological experiment. But the key is, they didn't stop.
They didn't stop. They went back every 7 years. 14 up, 21 up, 28 up, all the way to 63 up a few years ago.
You watch these people live their entire lives. You see them fall in love, get divorced, have kids, face illnesses.
And think about what that did culturally. These weren't actors. They were just regular kids who signed up for a documentary. But through the simple act of sustained observation,
they became celebrities.
They became celebrities. The audience felt they knew them. We have a relationship with Tony the cab driver or Neil the politician. That is the direct ancestor of the parasocial relationships we have with Instagram influencers today. It's that same mechanism.
It proved that an ordinary life, if you zoom in close enough and you stick with it, is incredibly compelling.
More compelling than fiction sometimes.
So if 7 Up was the sort of highbrow, respectable documentary ancestor, the 1970s gave us the messy, dramatic soap opera ancestor.
Oh, yeah. An American Family, 1973, on PBS, of all places.
This show is legendary. People still talk about it.
It was a 12-part series. The filmmakers moved in with the Loud family, a wealthy family in Santa Barbara, California. It was intended to be, again, a serious anthropological study of the American nuclear family at a time of great change.
But reality intervened.
Reality had other plans. During the filming, the parents, Pat and Bill Loud, their marriage it crumbled, and they decided to divorce.
On camera.
Pat asks Bill for a divorce on camera. It's an incredibly raw, uncomfortable moment.
I can't even imagine. And that wasn't the only thing.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Their oldest son, Lance Loud, he came out as gay. And in 1973, having an openly gay man on television who wasn't a stereotype, who was just living his life in New York's counterculture, it was revolutionary.
And the audience went absolutely nuts. It got huge ratings for PBS. It was on the cover of Newsweek.
It had the slow observational pacing of a documentary, but it had the plot twists of a soap opera.
Yeah.
Divorce, betrayal, a son breaking societal norms.
That's the secret sauce, isn't it?
That's the secret sauce. The producers of MTV's The Real World, the show we'll get to, explicitly cited An American Family as their #1 inspiration.
They saw the formula.
They realized that if you just put cameras on people long enough, the cracks will eventually show. And the cracks are where the entertainment is.
Okay, so we're building the creative lineage here. We have the pranks, the long-form documentary, the family drama. But I want to pause on the 1980s. Because we often think about art and creativity driving culture, but more often than not, It's money. It's economics.
Always.
And in 1988, there was a specific event that I think explains exactly why reality TV took over the world. It wasn't a show.
You're talking about the Writers Guild strike of '88.
The writer's strike. This is such a crucial piece of context that I think most people miss.
It's everything. You see this pattern again and again. Reality TV thrives when scripted TV is in crisis.
Explain what happened. So the writers go on strike, all the scripted shows, your sitcoms, your dramas, they shut down production.
Right. And for the big networks, CBS, NBC, ABC, it's a panic. They have empty slots in their primetime schedule, no new scripts coming in, and ad revenue on the line. They're scrambling, showing reruns.
But there was a new player in town.
There's the new kid on the block, the Fox network. They were the scrappy upstart. They needed content, and crucially, they needed it cheap.
They couldn't afford a big Tom Selleck drama.
No way. So they looked at the strike, not as a crisis, but as an opportunity.
Yeah.
They realized, wait a minute, if you just follow police officers around with a camera,
You don't need a writer.
you don't need a writer, you don't need expensive actors, you don't need to build sets. The street is your set. The cops are your actors. The crime is your script.
And Cop PS premiered in 1989. Bad boys, what is you gonna do?
It wasn't just a creative choice. It was a strike-breaking weapon. It was the ultimate strike-proof format.
And it introduced that aesthetic, that shaky, handheld cinema verite look that our brains now instantly associate with truth and authenticity.
Yes. But, and this is the key insight from the research, the real game-changer Cop PS and the reality boom that followed wouldn't have been sustainable on a mass scale without a specific piece of technology that arrived the very same year in 1989.
You're talking about Avid, the editing software?
Avid technology, yes.
I think for people who don't work in media, it's hard to grasp why a piece of software could change the content of television so dramatically. Can you break that down? Why does this matter so much?
Okay, think about the logistics before this. Before 1989, editing was linear. You were either physically cutting and taping strips of film together, or you were working with massive, clunky tape decks.
So if you wanted to move a scene from the end of the show to the beginning, it was a huge physical process.
A nightmare. You had to reassemble everything that came after it. Now imagine you're making a reality show. You shoot 100 hours of footage of a family just living, arguing, eating dinner, watching TV. Turning that mountain of tape into a watchable 22-minute episode was an economic and logistical impossibility.
It would take forever. It would cost a fortune. So you couldn't just let the cameras roll 24/7.
You couldn't. It was too much raw material to handle. But Avid changed everything. It was non-linear digital editing.
What does that mean, non-linear?
It means you could digitize all that footage, turn it into computer files. Then, on a screen, you could just drag and drop clips. You could take a reaction shot from Tuesday and paste it onto a comment that was made on Friday. You could try 1,000 different versions of a scene in an hour.
So the technology allowed the editors to become the primary storytellers.
They became the writers. They could construct a narrative from thousands of hours of disconnected moments. It made it financially viable to shoot Turbo 477.
It created the economic model.
It created the entire economic model that made the genre explode. It suddenly made reality TV significantly cheaper to produce than scripted TV. And in Hollywood, cheaper always wins.
So now we have the format, we have the economic incentive from the strike, and we have the technology to make it all work.
The perfect storm.
And now we enter the 90s, the explosion, and it all really kicks off with this simple concept, strangers in a house.
Which, we have to give credit where it's due. It didn't start in America.
How did it start?
It started in the Netherlands, a show called Number 28 in 1991.
Never heard of it.
Most people haven't. But it had all the elements. It put a group of young strangers together in a house. It used pop music on the soundtrack to heighten emotion. And it pioneered the use of the confessional, having the cast members look directly into a camera in a separate room and spill their guts.
So MTV basically lifted the whole format.
Well, The Real World launched in 1992, and there's a long-standing dispute. The creator of Number 28 claims they ripped them off. The Real World producers claim they were just inspired by an American family.
The truth is probably somewhere in the middle.
Probably. But The Real World is the one that codified the language from the United States. This is the true story of 7 strangers picked to live in a house.
And have their lives taped. It became the template, the absolute blueprint. But even with The Real World on MTV, it was still a niche youth culture thing. We needed a spark to train the mass audience. And looking at the timeline, the mid-90s gave us a reality show that wasn't technically a show at all.
You're talking about the White Bronco.
I'm talking about the O.J. Simpson trial. from 1994 to 1995. Reading through the analysis on this, it really does tick every single box of a modern reality franchise, doesn't it?
It's uncanny. You have a cast of bizarre, memorable characters. You have Kato Kaelin, the house guest. You have the dream team of lawyers, F. Lee Bailey, Robert Shapiro.
You have a central villain, or hero, depending on your perspective. You have the confessionals, which were the daily press conferences on the courthouse steps.
And, crucially, it disrupted the broadcast schedule. That's the key part. News networks preempted the daytime soap operas to show the live trial coverage.
And millions of people who are used to watching actors pretend to have drama on General Hospital suddenly realized...
Wait a second, this is better. This has real stakes,
Yeah.
real people, real life or death consequences.
It completely addicted the American public to serialized real-life drama. It was the nation's first big binge watch.
And the irony, of course, is the cast list.
It's almost too on the nose for a scriptwriter.
Robert Kardashian, one of the key defense attorneys.
It's unbelievable. The defense attorney for the original reality show fathered the family that would come to define the entire genre a decade later. It connects the dots perfectly from the 90s to now.
It absolutely primed the pump. The audience was ready, they had the taste for it, and then right at the turn of the millennium, the genre went nuclear. It went global.
Yeah.
And we got the competition format.
Survivor.
Survivor changed everything. Full stop.
Again, it didn't start in the U.S.
No, the format was created in Sweden. It was called Expedition Robinson, and it first aired in 1997. But when the U.S. version, Survivor, hit the air in the summer of 2000, it was a cultural atom bomb.
Because it added a game engine. It wasn't just observing people coexisting.
It was an elimination sport. The tribe has spoken. That added a layer of strategy and gameplay that was completely new. You weren't just living, you were competing.
And that brought in the strategy element. Alliances, betrayal, backstabbing. And crucially, it introduced the immunity mechanic.
Right. Which is a fascinating concept. The idea that in a game of social elimination, where it's all about being liked, you can perform a purely physical or mental task that makes you untouchable.
It doesn't matter if everyone hates you. If you win immunity, you're safe.
That adds a layer of game theory that separates it from just a simple popularity contest. It made it acceptable for smart people to watch and analyze reality TV. It wasn't just drama. It was a sport.
And the ratings were astronomical. Then we had American Idol launch in 2002, which dominated U.S. television ratings for nearly a decade straight. The genre was on top of the world.
Right.
But there was a wobble, wasn't there? The research mentions a dip around 9/11.
There was. After the attacks in 2001, the mood of the country shifted dramatically. People wanted comfort, they wanted connection, or they wanted hard news.
And watching people scheme to win $1 million felt frivolous.
It felt trivial. Interest in shows like The Amazing Race and The Mole waned for a bit. There was a moment where the industry thought, okay, the fad is over, it was a fun ride, but we're done with this.
But the cable networks had other ideas.
The cable networks looked at the numbers. The economics were just too good to ignore. Networks like Bravo, A&E, VH1, they realized they could fill 24 hours of programming for pennies on the dollar compared to producing one episode of a scripted drama.
And this is where we get the celebrity era.
Exactly. The first big hit was The Osbournes on MTV in 2002, following a washed-up heavy metal star and his family.
It was hilarious and bizarre and surprisingly heartfelt.
And it led to this flood of shows. The Anna Nicole Show, Flavor of Love on VH1. They took The Strangers in a house format and applied it to D-list celebrity.
Which brings us to the absolute zoo of subgenres we have today. It's not just one thing anymore. I want to break these down because it really shows how incredibly adaptable this format is.
It's like a virus. It can mutate to fit any host environment.
Let's start with the direct descendant of the real world, the docusoap.
Right, so the next big evolution here was a show called Laguna Beach, The Real Orange County on MTV in 2004.
I remember this. It was positioned as the real version of the hit scripted drama, The OC.
And it looked like it. Unlike the gritty handheld look of Copy S or early Real World, Laguna Beach was shot beautifully. It had slow motion. It had a pop-punk soundtrack. It looked like a movie.
And it had no confessionals.
No confessionals, which blurred the lines even further. You watched it and you thought, is this written? How did they get that perfect shot of them looking sadly out at the ocean?
And that birthed The Hills, which was even more polished, and eventually the 800-pound gorilla of the subgenre, The Real Housewives.
Which is just the daytime soap opera structure alliances, rivalries, gossip applied to the lives of wealthy women in different cities. It's all about conflict, status, and lifestyle porn.
Looking at mansions you'll never afford. Okay, so that's one branch. What about the subculture shows? This seems to be a huge category.
It is. This is the cultural tourism branch. You take a specific, often misunderstood or isolated group,
Like the Guidos of Jersey Shore.
or the polygamists of Sister Wives, or the Amish kids on Breaking Amish, or the family on Duck Dynasty.
Which became a monster hit.
In 2013, Duck Dynasty became the most popular reality series in cable television history. More people were watching that than most scripted shows.
It's fascinating because it allows you, as the viewer, to sit on your couch and get a window into a world that is completely alien to your own. You can judge it, you can admire it, but you get to observe it from a safe distance.
And you have the occupational shows, Deadliest Catch, Ice Road Truckers, Axemen.
High stakes, blue collar, mostly male-dominated jobs.
Right. Very different demographic. And then there's a subcategory of that, the transactional shows. Pawn Stars is the perfect example.
That format is genius.
It's brilliant because every segment has a self-contained story. Someone brings in an item. You get a little history lesson about the item. There's a negotiation. A deal is made or not made. It's clean, it's simple, and it mixes history, finance, and character drama.
And we can't forget the social experiments. This is where things get a little more high concept and sometimes a little dark.
Wife Swap is the classic example of conflict engineering.
The premise is just built for fireworks.
You take two families with completely opposing values, a vegan, pacifist, homeschooling family, and a hunting, military, fast food eating family. And you swap the mothers for 2 weeks. It is literally designed to create friction.
And we've seen this evolve into things like The Traitors recently.
Which is a brilliant murder mystery format. But
Right.
then you get the really dark stuff from the 2000s. There was a UK show called Shattered, where contestants competed to see how long they could go without sleep.
That sounds like torture.
They started hallucinating. Or an American show called Solitary, where people were put into solitary confinement pods and had to endure these bizarre challenges. It gets pretty dystopian pretty fast.
It pushes the boundaries of ethics, which is a theme we need to come back to. But on the lighter side, you also have the parodies and hoaxes.
Yes, the self-aware shows. The Joe Schmo show was one of the first. They took one regular guy and surrounded him with actors playing every reality TV archetype. The villain, the dumb blonde, the hero, and he didn't know.
Or I Want to Marry Harry, where a group of American women were tricked into thinking they were competing for the affections of Prince Harry.
He was just a random lookalike.
Yeah.
And then you have the pinnacle of the form, which is something like Nathan For You.
I love Nathan For You.
It's brilliant because it uses the deadpan, awkward language of reality TV, the long pauses, the earnest voiceover, the staged scenarios, to create incredible comedy. It deconstructs the genre while also being a perfect example of it.
So the format can be anything. It can be a family soap, a game show, a workplace doc, a comedy. Okay, so now let's bring it up to the present day, the 2010s and 2020s. The biggest shift has to be streaming.
Without a doubt. Netflix entered the game late, but they entered it aggressively.
With shows like Love is Blind.
Love is Blind, The Circle. Too hot to handle. And these shows are designed differently. They're not made for week-to-week viewing with a commercial break. They're designed for the binge model. They have cliffhangers at the end of every episode to keep you clicking next.
And streaming has globalized the format even more, hasn't it?
Completely. The barrier to watching foreign language reality TV has totally dropped. We're seeing this huge influx from South Korea.
The Masked Singer.
The Masked Singer started as a Korean show called King of Masked Singer, the hit dating show Singles Inferno. From Japan, you had Terrace House, which was a much quieter, more observational style. From India, Indian matchmaking. It's a global conversation now.
And we have to mention the COVID-19 impact, because when the world shut down in 2020, scripted productions stopped on a dime.
Everything stopped. You couldn't have 100 people on a soundstage. But unscripted shows, which often have smaller crews, were able to figure out bubble productions much faster.
So they were the first ones back on the air.
They filled the gaps in the schedule, just like they did during the writer's strike. And we also saw a rise in what you might call cozy viewing. People were stressed, they were scared, they didn't want high-conflict drama.
They wanted Is It Cake.
They wanted Is It Cake? They wanted the Great British Bake Off. Just gentle, low-stakes, comforting content to soothe our pandemic-addled brains.
Is it cake? The question that truly defined a generation. But this brings us to the elephant in the room. We've been using the word reality this whole time. And now we need to talk about the lie in the title, the reality problem.
The big asterisk next to the whole genre.
Because as we get into the 2000s and the era of the Hills, the production gets so much more sophisticated. And we see this term in the notes that the industry uses, soft scripting.
It's a polite, corporate-friendly term for manipulation.
Walk us through how this actually works on a practical level, because they're not handing Lauren Conrad a script with her lines written on it, right? That's not how it works.
No, that would be illegal under certain broadcast rules. And besides, most of these people aren't good enough actors to pull it off. Instead, you produce the environment. You create the conditions for drama to happen.
Give me an example.
Okay, let's say you're a producer on a Real Housewives show. You know that cast member A is angry at cast member B because of something that happened last week. You don't write them a fight scene, you just schedule a group dinner.
At a restaurant with lots of alcohol.
With lots of free-flowing alcohol.
Yeah.
You seat them directly opposite each other. And then, maybe right before the cameras start rolling, a producer casually goes up to cast member A and whispers, "Hey, just so you know, I heard B was talking about your husband's business troubles earlier."
You light the fuse.
You light the fuse, you step back, you roll cameras, and you let the explosion happen. You didn't make it happen. You just created the perfect laboratory conditions for it. It's plausibly deniable.
And then there's the editing. We touched on how Avid made it possible, but let's talk about the specific techniques. Let's talk about frankenbiting.
This is the one that really gives me the chills. It's so common, and it's so deceptive.
What is it exactly?
So it's an audio editing technique.
Right.
Let's say a cast member is in a confessional interview. The producer asks, "How was your vacation?"
Mm-hmm.
And they say, "I really love going to the beach, but I hate when it rains, and unfortunately it rained the whole time." A perfectly normal sentence. But the editor needs them to sound like they're angry at another person for a fight they want to create in the episode. So they take the audio of the words, "I hate," from that sentence. And they take a different interview where that person says the name cast member B.
Oh, no.
And they digitally stitch them together. So the audio you hear in the show is, "I hate cast member B," a sentence that was never, ever spoken.
So they literally construct sentences out of thin air.
Out of individual words plucked from hours of interviews. And because we don't see their mouth moving when we hear this line, the editors will cut away to a shot of a sunset or a dog or someone else's reaction. We, the audience, just accept it as truth.
That is terrifying. It means you can manufacture a villain out of a perfectly nice person just by chopping up their words.
It happens all the time. And then you have shows like Keeping Up with the Kardashians and The Hills, which have faced numerous accusations, and in some cases have even admitted to doing full reshoots.
Like, that scene wasn't dramatic enough, let's do it again.
Exactly. Hey, the lighting wasn't very good when you had that emotional breakup conversation. Can we just stage it again over by the window? At that point, it's not reality. It's just a performance of reality.
Which raises the massive ethical question. We are watching real people, not actors, often in their most vulnerable, painful, or humiliating moments.
And we are often watching people who are specifically cast because they're unstable. There's a significant and valid criticism that the genre actively exploits mental health issues.
Oh, so.
If you have a cast member who is volatile, who drinks too much, who has anger management issues, in the real world, the responsible thing to do is to get them help.
In reality TV.
You give them a second season and more screen time because they're good TV. The shows are structured to reward the most disruptive, chaotic, and often cruel behavior.
It normalizes cruelty. It makes it seem like screaming at your friend over brunch is a normal way to resolve conflict.
It does. And there is a tragic and well-documented pattern of cast members from these shows leaving with severe trauma, depression, and PTSD. They are chewed up by the machine and then discarded the moment their ratings drop.
And yet, we watch. Millions and millions of us. What does that say about us as an audience?
Well, the psychology is pretty fascinating. There's the obvious voyeurism, the simple pleasure of looking into someone else's life. But there are darker forces at play.
Like?
Schadenfreude, a German word for taking pleasure in the misfortune of others. We get a little thrill out of watching someone else's perfect life fall apart. And then there's social comparison.
At least I'm not them.
At least my life isn't that much of a mess.
Yeah.
We watch an episode of Hoarders or a show about a dysfunctional family, and we feel better about our own, maybe slightly mediocre, lives in comparison. A 2012 survey actually found that regular reality viewers tended to be more extroverted, but also more neurotic and have lower self-esteem.
So it's a form of self-soothing. Wow. Okay, I want to pivot now to the final section, to the impact. Because you can dismiss reality TV as trash. You can critique its ethics, but you absolutely cannot ignore its power.
You can't. Let's start with the most obvious impact. The democratization of fame.
What do you mean by that?
For most of the 20th century, you had to have a talent to be famous. You had to be a great actor, a great singer, a great athlete. Reality TV threw that out the window. It created the famous for being famous category.
The Z-list celebrity, the
Yep.
influencer, Kim Kardashian,
Yes,
Paris Hilton.
exactly. People whose primary talent is the performance of their own life. And that platform, that fame, it translates directly into real-world power, which is where it gets really interesting and really serious.
We have to talk about The Apprentice.
We do, and we should be clear, regardless of your personal politics, you have to acknowledge the media mechanism that was at work there.
It's a fascinating case study.
The Apprentice ran for 14 seasons. Week after week, it presented Donald Trump not as a complex real estate developer with a mixed record of bankruptcies and successes.
No, it presented him as a mythical authority figure. The decisive boss in the high-backed chair in the boardroom. The man with the catchphrase.
You're fired. It edited out all the nuance, all the failures, and it created a television character of ultimate competence and authority.
And many, many political analysts credit that show with reviving his public image and paving the way for his 2016 presidential run. The voters thought they were electing the character from the boardroom.
They were voting for the TV show character. And he's not the only one. This isn't an isolated incident.
Right. Sean Duffy from The Real World. Boston, back in 1997, went on to become a multi-term U.S. congressman.
Investors from Dragon's Den, which is the original UK format that Shark Tank is based on, have gone on to enter politics in countries like Denmark and Israel. Kevin O'Leary in Canada made a serious run for the leadership of his party.
So the skill set required to be a successful reality PD star, the ability to perform authenticity, to handle manufactured conflict, to speak in memorable sound bites, it translates perfectly to modern politics.
That's the exact same muscle. But the impact goes even further, goes beyond just Western politicians. In some authoritarian countries, the simple act of voting on a reality show was the first time citizens ever got to vote for anything.
Really? That's incredible.
Look at China in 2005. They had a show called Supergirl. It was basically their version of American Idol. It was a sensation. It drew 400 million viewers.
400 million.
But the key was it was democratic. The audience voted for the winner via text message. They chose their champion.
And the government did not like that.
The Chinese government freaked out. They banned the show for being too democratic and vulgar. They didn't like the idea of their citizens getting used to the concept that their collective voice could choose a winner.
A singing show was seen as a threat to the state.
A profound threat. Or take another example from the Middle East, a show called Millions Poet. It's a poetry competition, huge in the Arab world.
Okay.
In 2010, a Saudi housewife named Hissa Hilal went on the show. And she didn't just read nice poems about flowers and love. She stood on that stage and read poems that directly criticized extremist Islamic clerics.
On live television.
In Saudi Arabia.
On live television, broadcast across the region, she received death threats. But she also received a massive wave of public support. She came in third. She used a reality competition format to speak truth to power in a way that was almost impossible for her to do otherwise.
That gives me chills. It shows that the format itself is neutral. It's a tool. It can be used for vanity and narcissism, but it can also be used for voice and for change.
Absolutely. In Indonesia, there was a popular show called Jika Aku Menjadi, which means if I were where middle-class people would live the life of a poor person for a week. It was credited with helping bridge the understanding gap between economic classes. It's not all just table flipping and drunken fights. Okay, so let's bring this all home. Let's try to sum this up. We've gone from Nazi propaganda to Candid Camera. From a writer's strike creating copy S to the Kardashians completely dominating the internet.
It's a genre that, at its core, fills the gaps. It fills the gaps in broadcast schedules when writers strike. It fills the gaps in our own lives, our need for connection when we feel lonely. And it fills the gap between who we are and the more interesting person we want to be.
We've covered a lot of ground. From the high-minded sociology of 7-Up to the glorious trash of The Real Housewives. But I keep coming back to that idea you mentioned at the beginning, the idea of the mirror.
The funhouse mirror.
Right. It reflects us, but it also distorts us. For 40 years now, we have been watching people perform a version of authenticity. We've watched people learn that flipping a table gets you more screen time. We've watched people learn that betraying your friends is a valid strategy to win immunity.
We've made a spectator sport out of the worst aspects of human behavior.
And the really scary final question isn't why do they do it? The scary question is, have we started doing it too?
Has the audience started performing? For for the cameras that are now everywhere.
Exactly. Look at your own Instagram stories. Look at how we argue on Twitter or Facebook. We are all editing our own lives now. We are all creating story arcs. We are all performing for an invisible audience, hoping to get the likes, hoping to not get voted off the island.
We are all cast members in our own reality show now.
That is something to chew on the next time you're about to post. Thanks for diving deep with us.
My pleasure. See you next time.